Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to another Wolfram Language Design Review. This one is another one in our series about Tabular. And the topic for today is what to do when things don't fit in a tabular, as in, well, let's look at what this is doing. This is saying map to string, string to number. Okay, that's the strings. But now if we want to make this a number, that's not going to fit in a machine integer. Right?
Exactly.
Right. Correct.
You've got to have something inside the missing there, in my opinion. To say, missing, in other words, I don't see any reason. Our missing processing stuff is just looking for the head, is it not?
Yes. Yes. And that's all we talked about trying to set up something so that we can, carry different tags around. It's possible, but it probably won't propagate well through operations.
So what? I mean,
Yeah.
Missing plus missing, it's going to be a missing, presumably.
Yes.
Should we generate a message?
What's missing plus 2? Is that also missing?
Well,
that's
one of the questions for these control parameters is in the kernel, it's just 2, which is, and that's pretty disastrous. In tabular, if you do that, it's just going to be another missing.
Then we've got to have a way to do that at the level of kernel computation.
Well, so the way to do that is you can convert those things to tabular column and do the operation and then convert back.
That's weird.
Yes, it's a bit weird, but
well, is it obvious that we should not make 2 plus missing be missing?
No, it's not obvious. And I thought about that, fiddling with the basic arithmetic in ways like that is a little bit dangerous, but I think it might be possible to write. Since we sort everything with plus, I think we can do that. The complicated case is when we get to listability.
Yeah, what's the issue? So you say AB plus C missing. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly.
What should you do in that case?
Yes. Well, I think the second element, I mean, you must have had some things defined before. But it's assuming those were just symbols. Then yeah, that last element I think should just be missing. But again, that's something that we want to have a control parameter for, because people may be depending on the old behavior.
Just like we have a function delete missing, maybe we should have a function called conform missing or something, or compress missing or something like that. Because I'm not sure that I think this could be useful. And we've had it for years like this. And why not leave it and then have some, processing function that is essentially called automatically inside Tabular that will do things like turn this, because it needs a choice. I mean, it's not totally obvious to me that this shouldn't just be B as opposed to B plus missing. So in other words, conform.
I think that's it's pretty obvious to me that that's not the answer.
All right, fine.
Yeah.
Fine.
Right. I think you'd want to replace missing with 0 first to do that.
Now here's a more interesting question. If you had the list AB plus missing, is the result missing, or is it a list of 2 missings?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's where it starts to get very tricky. I think it has to be a list.
What does indeterminate do?
Well, indeterminate is known. Yeah. Indeterminate is known to be a scalar, right? It's nan, right? So it should. I think that behavior is pretty obvious.
Okay.
I don't think we should break the listability for the fact that there's a missing there.
Okay.
No. I think we have to keep the listability. And if somebody wants that to be a vector missing, then there's Adam's whole branch with the non-scalar stuff that would give that possibility.
That's threadable, right?
No, it's
Non-threadable.
non-threadable. Okay, I can't remember what the name of it's become, but that's, yeah.
So this would be
No, it's an attribute. It's an
It's an
attribute.
attribute.
Yeah.
So you would need to, I guess we don't.
so we
have
can't
any,
really do that.
right. You'd have to muck with well, yeah.
Yeah.
We don't have a local attributes. We don't have a block attributes mechanism, which perhaps we should have. How would this work? I mean, it would usually be a set attributes.
Yeah, well, you could block missing and set attributes locally on it, right?
Yes.
And I want, well, here, let me test this in Adam's branch. Well, this is the prototype build. What happened? I mean, this is kind of crazy, but what happens if you do a list AB plus missing of, vector symbol of X?
Yes, that might inherit properly.
That,
No, this would require set attributes of missing, right?
Yeah.
Set attributes of missing command.
No, the vector symbol thing has a certain propagation through various things. So it might just have to be set to propagate through missing.
But yeah, that's
Look, my suggestion is that I don't think the name is right, but that we have a function like conform missing that essentially resolves what are otherwise missings that are treated purely symbolically. It's kind of the opposite of delete missing, which just gets rid of all the missings. This is something which infects things with missings by default.
Mm-hmm. We have an option missing behavior, which with value automatic makes query and dataset do clever things with missing.
What kind of clever things?
Well, depending on the function, like mean or total, it will do what you expect, replacing by 0 or whatever.
well, right. I presume for mean you'd replace by 0 and decrease the denominator by 1.
Yeah. One would hope.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, God. This is just so hopeless. This is a totally underdocumented function. Okay?
Yep, absolutely. Yep.
So, I mean, I agree this is a reasonable thing to have. For Tabular, presumably, as well. But
yeah, I mean, I think it's generally useful, although it is very mystical. Not just because it's not very well documented, but because it's just, I feel like there are a lot of situations where, I don't know, where there's complicated stuff with missing, and this kind of just magically handles it in a way that's different from how it would handle, outside of query.
Yes.
Yep.
But I mean, that suggests that we want a wrapper.
I mean, look, if there's a sort of a single behavior for missing that we think is like, you either want to have the current behavior where it basically does nothing, or you want to have this other behavior where it does something like what missing behavior does with automatic, then, I mean, it sort of sounds like maybe we should just have a different symbol that just has this behavior everywhere all the time.
I see what that's an interesting idea, Christopher. Yeah.
How are we generating missings? I mean, other than just what generates missings? Some of the entity value stuff generates missings.
Yeah, missing keys.
Associations. Yeah.
And the examples I have here is when we can't convert, we're generating a missing and instead of doing an overflow and converting to big nums, which would be disastrous for a huge table, we generate a missing.
I don't understand why we would ever want missing. I mean, if you say mean of 2, 3, missing, I just don't see why that would ever want to be something like that.
Well, I don't think it would. It doesn't necessarily want to be 2.5 because that could just be wrong.
Right. It depends on what stage of the computation you're at, right?
Yeah.
And how much you want to fudge your data.
Yeah, there's some interesting examples, and I don't remember exactly where I played with the entity framework a bit. And you do stuff with country data, and you get these bizarre means with 9 times missing plus this other stuff. And I guess it tells you how many countries don't have the data, which is useful in some sense, but doesn't actually give you the results you always want. So that's why I think this needs to be, it needs to be controllable somehow.
Well, that's why I'm suggesting a propagate missing type thing. Because, so the real question is, at the source of the missing, do you know how you're going to want to handle it? Or do you better know that at the end of the computation when you're kind of trying to pull everything together? I claim it's more likely you know it at the end of the computation.
I think I agree with that.
Yes. But on the other hand is if you have a whole chain of, for example, if we're doing stuff out of core, we have a whole chain of commands. I guess if we can know ahead of time that we're going to propagate missing in a certain way, that can be done.
Yeah, we can always have a missing behavior-ish thing that is an option. I mean, so long as there is a default behavior and it's changeable and you can get the pure symbolic behavior somehow, I think it's okay.
Well, no, wait, hold on. There's just two sort of points. I mean, one is, I think maybe this is, Rob, what you were already saying, that if you're doing big operations, you can't have it like a tabular column of integers where some of them are missing. You do an operation with it, and now you have a tabular column of expressions because some of them are now 2 plus missing, which is not an integer or a missing. Right? Like that would be very inefficient if that's sort of how it worked. The other thing is, I would say recovering, saving yourself from missings at the very end, I think is generally bad because there are lots of places that missings could have come from. And when you just have a result where it's, 1/3 5 plus missing, it's really hard to know, like, well, what actually is that missing? Should it be 0? Should the whole thing be missing? And it helps you if you knew that, oh, well, that came from when I called mean. And then I have a sort of certain missing policy I'd want in that particular function that's different from if I was, using times at. I probably want 1 as my missing substitute. So I think
it's the horrifying case.
Right. I when you asked earlier, are you more likely to know at the beginning or the end? My answer was going to be in the middle.
Right. Yeah. Like when you're actually doing the operation that's going to create some ugly missing combo expression. That's when you know what you want the missing behavior to be.
Exactly. Because it's sort of, missing is sort of tied in a little bit with the types.
Yeah. Actually, I think what does indeterminate do with like indeterminate over indeterminate or indeterminate minus indeterminate, etc.? I think I remember seeing some cases with this that were sort of surprising, but
yeah, actually, I mean,
it should be in any sort of purely numerical thing. It should just resolve to indeterminate.
Okay, that's what you'd want. Yeah.
Yeah. So in some sense, maybe what the semantics, which I've got for this missing stuff, is really perhaps indeterminate is a better way to think about it.
And maybe actually one other argument for something like indeterminate, maybe, is that it sounded like, at least before Rob, it sounded like missing, at least for now, you don't have a good way of handling the argument. Like if you have some of them have missing of quotes blah, and some of them are missing of quotes foo, and so on, there isn't a great way to handle that. So indeterminates are always just indeterminate.
Right. And in some sense, when we can't convert to a machine integer, it is sort of indeterminate in some sense. So
right. But of course, indeterminate is only unambiguously indeterminate in a purely numerical context, right? I'm pretty sure if you did indeterminate plus today, you'd get indeterminate plus a data object and not indeterminate.
I think indeterminate's just an up value. So it's
indeterminate is very numeric. Infectious. That's
yeah. I mean, I think it's any function that's
f of indeterminate is.
I mean, what happens if you? So I mean, there can be other types like strings that are not numbers.
Or yeah.
But those
like
things that
string length of indeterminate.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think indeterminate, if I remember right, it's just an up value. So if the function calling it is like has the some numeric attribute, then it returns indeterminate.
Yeah.
Which means if you cleverly call it on, like one of the integer functions, which doesn't have the numeric function attribute, it won't.
So we have another one that has similar poisonous behavior, which is called undefined. So indeterminate means it exists. We just don't know what it is.
Right.
Undefined.
So right. So
means that it doesn't exist.
Right. So like indeterminate and and A is indeterminate and A, but undefined and A is undefined. Please.
So this is like in computer science, that's usually done as the bottom element, the bot.
I mean, one problem, by the way, with things like indeterminate and undefined is that we have a little bit of machinery around missing, like delete missing, I guess maybe replace missing or something at some point. But we don't really have any good machinery for stuff like undefined.
Well, maybe we could have a missing with a tag indeterminate that would, it's sort of a workaround a little bit, but that would be and missings with that always propagate.
Oh, like missing of indeterminate has indeterminate semantics or something.
Yeah,
like
but it would be
with
a tag. I mean, I think that it would be quote indeterminate, as a tag.
Okay, that would be very funky, but
it would be very funky. Yes,
but maybe I mean, right? I mean, basically the point would be you're defining the behavior, how you want this missing to behave. Like you can give an argument to the missing that defines how you want it to behave.
Yeah.
I mean, there is something nice about that because, for example, if you know that, I mean, you might imagine we'd have more than just indeterminate. So maybe if you know it's an indeterminate integer versus an indeterminate string, it can maybe be a little bit different.
Yeah, and that so instead of having the blank missing, maybe we could have missing of indeterminate, and then if people have different missings, we can try. I think on propagation, those will go, but it's just I'm not sure if that's the.
Look, we already have this concept of missing and reason.
Yep.
We certainly could have some kind of option to missing, which would determine its propagation. But I'm still trying to understand what, for the mean case, for example, what do we actually want? Take the data to be just absent and mean everything else without the data. You could say invalidate the whole result. You know, what do you want to do? So I mean, maybe you had a list here.
Yeah, I have a list. So
I think the most common case will be nothing semantics rather
yes,
than
which means
indeterminate.
just drop it.
yeah,
Exactly.
just drop it. I think that's the common case.
Okay,
that
so
comes up.
let me just let's make some notes here. So what to do, what semantics to have for the missing when used. And so one possibility is indeterminate, which just infects everything.
Not everything. There's undefined is more powerful.
Okay.
They have different semantics.
Okay. Undefined. And then there is nothing. Right? So nothing just shrivels up and disappears. Undefined infects everything. Indeterminate affects arithmetic. Right? What other cases do we want for missing? I guess we want another possibility is
0?
Maybe absorb into, but that's probably nothing. Absorb into one missing. So in other words, if you have 7 missings, if you have a sum of terms and I don't know, sum of terms, maybe that's not right. 7 plus missing is a bit weird, but 7 plus 8 times missing is even weirder.
Yes.
And almost certainly wrong, because that means missing minus missing is 0 and all those kinds of things.
Yeah.
What other behaviors can one imagine wanting? So let's imagine that missing behavior could, by default, missing behavior arrow indeterminate would make the missings behave like indeterminate. This may be crazy. I don't know. See what I'm saying?
I think that's a little, at best it should be quotes indeterminate, because otherwise it just sounds like it's unclear what the missing behavior should be.
Yeah, okay. But now where would we put that option? I mean, in other words, that could be in any of these things, like tabular, you know, like this tabular column, for example, here, could have a missing behavior.
So we had an idea for that, which we put at the very, it wasn't just with missing behavior, but the other ones. And that was, you know, that we discussed this morning. And I don't know if it's the best idea, but it's a possibility. So we could have a missing behavior option, which if you give it to tabular, that inherits to transform columns and stuff. But we could also, for globally, have a dollar missing behavior variable that would set it, you know, as a global thing. And I know that's not ideal to have global things, but there's some cases where you can't avoid that.
I don't see how that would help us. Wait a minute. Why would we want that?
Okay, so suppose I have a tabular column and we've so tabular column, and you add that to another tabular column.
Yes.
Okay. So those, so how would you control the missing behavior on that sum?
Of just you'd have to have a wrapper around the whole thing.
Yep.
Because I don't think a global variable just seems horrifying. Just going to be completely non-reproducible and, you know, just a mess.
It could be the default value of the option.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we have some triples like in assumptions. They are assuming to control from outside, the option assumptions, and the dollar assumptions.
Yeah.
And they play well together. You choose what's the method you want to follow.
Yes, I agree.
And the default of the dollar variable would be automatic. And so somebody could, I mean, what's nice about that is what the dollar variables are nice is you can locally set it in block.
Fine. Fine.
I mean, I'm not saying it's the best way to do it, but it does have some advantages.
Yeah, okay, fine. But then you're saying that if we have a missing behavior option, that we can have dollar missing behavior, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Then what we would end up with is something like with missing behavior. Or maybe we need a different term for this. With missing behavior. Blah. Or we would have the missing behavior option, or we would have dollar missing behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But so now, I mean, we could call this combine or something. We could call this always propagate. I mean, just I mean, that's disappear basically. I'm not sure what the right terms are, but I mean, there are these different cases. And
well, it might be ignore is another thing instead of disappear.
That's better. And I mean, you're claiming there might be just a plain 0. Set it to 0. It's not necessarily 0 that you want to set it to. I mean, you might want to set. Go ahead.
But I was thinking that it will depend very much on the operation we want to perform. In something that is fundamentally mathematical, the 0 might be useful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Look at these here.
For example, in general, we might want to make it 0 and count 1 less. But what if the user wants to count the presence of the missing, but still make it 0?
Sorry, what do you mean by that?
That if you have a list, exactly. So if you have a list of 3 elements and 1 missing, you still want to divide by 4.
Wouldn't that just be replacing the missing with 0?
Yeah, that's doing missing imputation.
Yeah.
Yes. These
I
are.
mean, I think if you want to treat missing as a specific value, the proper way is to impute it.
Yeah, I think that seems overkill.
Well, you can impute it as 0, which is what that is. I mean,
how do you do that?
I mean, you could just say replace.
What you proposed last time was like transform missing. We haven't implemented that yet.
Transform missing?
Yeah. If you go open the recap, we look at that last time. Transform missing, the second one. So this one was the proposal, and then if you scroll down, that's what you propose at the end. I mean, we probably have to do some more design rounds on this.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
but does the problem is, does the missing behavior, does that control that case of converting strings to numbers? It almost seems like we need another thing, which Jose suggested is, what is it, failure action or action? I can't.
Yes, the current option in query is failure action.
See, because here, instead of doing some of regenerated and missing from something that doesn't work, which is a little bit different than propagating missing.
What does the compiler do when you try and just cast?
Oh, it just fails. It just returns an exception.
I see. I
mean, you can use the undocumented, unchecked arithmetic, and it will wrap around, but the default, the failure, and I've worked with a compiler to set up this arithmetic so that we can catch the exceptions and continue on with the computation, which is typically what people want to do.
Right. Okay, so but what you're talking about here is the conversion. The first section here is all about data conversions per column.
Yes. Yep. Yep.
And what it should do when well, what do you think it should do? I mean,
well, I think we want to allow people to be able to control that, because in some cases people do want to get big nums and actually do the, continue the computation with big nums. But in a lot of cases for big table, they don't want to do that. So we proposed, I think at the very end, there's a proposal for what we might do with the failure action. I think Jose wrote, yeah, look at the comparative failure action.
Yeah. Why does this remind me of the whole, error handling discussion? In other words, what to do if some particular kind of thing happens.
Yes, I mean, exactly. It's exactly
related.
that.
And the problem is that what we need. What's that?
It's a friend.
Yes, but what we needed in error handling. Let's remind ourselves the problem of error handling is if you were going to write everything precisely, then you don't even have any errors. You're going to have code that just checks every case. The whole point of error handling is it's a safety net. It's a broad safety net that tells you roughly whether you want, the analogy is falling apart here. But
well,
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's already a difference though, which is that there are cases when you just you know you're going to have missings. It's not a matter of, oh, I didn't consider it. You just you're going to have them.
Yeah, fair enough.
Like they semantically mean something.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
There's cases of generated missing, like some of what I'm talking about here. There's also missing pieces in the data, observations that just weren't made.
Right.
I was going to say, doesn't numeric array have like a way of, maybe it's a method option of like saying how you want to convert things, like
that example at the top of the screen there, of the top of that notebook, conversion method goes around. That's a numeric array conversion method.
Okay.
So there's a whole set of, and that I've used those methods for tabular column conversion with sort of directive options like that.
So hold on. Let me just understand here. So the first question is, okay, let's say we've got an importer and it is importing from a CSV or a spreadsheet or something, and there is simply stuff there that is like a null string in place of a number.
Yep.
And then later on we compute the mean of that column. I think that the civilized thing to do is to make it clear that that there was something wrong, because otherwise people just, I'm sure there's a million papers in the medical research literature, for example, where people had missing data and they just went and computed statistics on it. They had no idea there was missing data, how much of it there was, and they quote a p-value of whatever it is, and it's all nonsense.
Because... Yeah, honestly, I think the conservative thing is just to return missing in a lot of cases. Just have it propagate. And if you don't want to propagate, then you have to do something.
Yeah. I do think it reminds me of numeric precision, where we have done a good job over the many decades of returning only, in arbitrary precision, at least returning only the digits that are justified.
Yes.
So, for example, let me give an example here. So I could imagine in a fit, you might want to say my missing is certainly between 0 and 10, though I don't know what it exactly is. So make me a fit that allows all my missings to be anywhere from 0 to 10. Don't ignore the missings. The missings, in fact, generate uncertainty, but bounded amounts of uncertainty. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so that would effectively be doing the transform missing. You transform missing to around of blah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
But around has a
right.
definite distribution. I mean, it thinks it's a normal distribution.
Not really.
It does.
Well, no,
No.
it does.
It really
but,
does.
But I mean, that's probably what you'd want anyway. If you wanted to have something weird like this, where you want to say that I have this value, but I know it's between X and Y. I mean, around seems like it is like kind of the formalism we have for that.
Or interval.
But either way, I mean, it's like this is a separate. I think this is kind of a separate step. Like when you call mean and there's missings in it, you'd like it to return missing, and then when you see right, you like to return missing, and then when you see, oh well, actually, I have a policy for, I know that all these missings are between 2 and 4 or something like that. Then you use replace or transform missings or whatever we have to transform it to whatever you want.
Right. And
I realize another way to think about it too is to think of them as weights. So let's say that you want to compute a mean and you have a missing element. If you set the weight for that element to be 0, it will effectively, not be counted, but you still count it as an element. So you're going to still divide by n if you had n. See what I'm saying?
No, you wouldn't.
Well, in general, this is a complicated problem.
You divide by the sum of the weights.
Right. This is actually something I've encountered, which is this is like a nice feature we could have, which is if you do mean of weighted data, if you have something with weight 0 and the value is something silly like missing, then or like infinity or missing or something like that, you'd like it to just ignore it, right? But instead you end up getting, I think, weird algebraic stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But if the weight is 0, that should be, one practical example is if you're doing filtering on an image or an array, like you have the usual boundary problem. And we support padding none, which what it's doing is using a smaller kernel at the boundary, which is effectively setting the weight of the stuff beyond the boundary to 0. And those are stuff beyond the boundary of the image is practically missing elements.
Good point. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So let's go back. What are we trying to achieve with the calculus of missing? We would like to, once we're in there's on the way in, the blank column in the spreadsheet, the blank cell in the spreadsheet or whatever, there's the minus 999 in the spreadsheet. You know what I'm saying? Where we have,
where a proxy element is used.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is on import. It's like a number was given as blank, was given as minus 999, etc. What do we want it to do? Or it could be, or could come from curated data, where we know, e.g., no atomic mass for a radioactive element. So in other words, if we say, right, because there isn't, there's no natural abundance, so it is, people usually usually put in parentheses, the most common isotopes mass or something. That's an example of a very controlled missing, if you get what I'm saying. We kind of really know what's going on at some level, as opposed to just it was blank in the spreadsheet, in which case we have no idea what was going on without giving additional information. So what are other cases on import where we want to get a missing? Well, okay, another issue is the specified data type can't represent the specified data. Another case is something like, look up, something like we attempted to look up for an element that isn't there. Right, so those are, I mean, honestly, in that case, we just want that error to propagate. We don't want something where, if I say look up in, A goes to X, and I say look up B, I don't really ever want that. I mean, I never want that. I really want that to infect any computation. It seems extremely unlikely that I would want to just set that to 0 in computing a mean. Does that make sense to people?
I think it will depend on the computation. If we are looking at, I don't know, some data about millions of people, we will not care about one.
Yeah, okay.
This is something that you typically decide at the beginning. I mean, some algorithms are built to deal with missing data inside them, so you want to leave them. Some others
but the question is, why is the data missing? Is this something which is where you have a structural error, in which case you better be told your code is wrong, or is it something where there's messiness in the data?
I think that's minor. I mean, there is some stuff that is, if we are very aggressive in creating the missing, it might be that you have missings because of some error. But typically, missing is because like the data is simply not there. Like it's a questionnaire and people didn't answer the question.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
So that's by far, I think, the major case of missing. And a lot of missing we are going to generate by being smart and maybe suggesting. We need to do a nice discussion about schema. But some stuff that we can suggest is if you have a string column, like none, known, empty string, could be suggested as possible missing element. I mean, typically there's consistency in how you define it, but it really depends on the file. I mean, a single file typically use the same convention to define the missing, but there are different conventions. Not too many, but there are.
Okay, but okay. So one question is on import. What we probably think we're going to get is a missing with possibly some defined missing behavior that came in from the import. Okay, but I mean, so missing generally has a reason, which is mostly human readable. And I mean, let's imagine that missing essentially had a missing behavior option. And you could, if you wanted to, set it when you create the missing. Does that make sense? And then that missing behavior option would determine how various kinds of functions handle this missing. Now, in a perfect world, we just went through up at the top here, these cases here. So in other words, one way to define the missing behavior, instead of giving a missing behavior option, okay, so one possibility is, missing behavior option, okay, there's missing behavior option handling. It's basically fully global with either dollar missing behavior or with missing behavior and so on. From the outside, fully global. Okay, now another possibility would be when the missing is first introduced. So then it would be a missing blah, 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 with missing behavior arrow, whatever you want it to do.
So like a practical example here is like import creates missing because the data is not available.
Yes.
So like it can be translate, and that by default goes to a specific missing behavior.
Exactly. Okay, so now, okay, then there's in a particular operation. In other words, we could imagine something like mean, blah, 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 missing behavior, arrow, blah, 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 blah. We could imagine fine-grained control in specific functions. Or more interestingly and more relevantly, something like, find fit, missing behavior, arrow, whatever. Comments on this? I think this is fairly sensible. I mean, it may not be precisely right, but I think it's fairly sensible.
So maybe one advantage, I'm not sure this is great, but one advantage of this is that it means it can be a lot more efficient than, say, it means you only have to go through the list once, for example, because you don't have to first replace all the missings with whatever and then run mean.
Definitely. I mean, which thing are you saying to this? I mean, we've got cases 1, 2, 3, basically.
I mean three.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, 3 would be a thing that gradually seeps into the system with different functions, handling it differently. And sometimes
using Tabular, we can experiment early. Yeah, because you don't need to modify mean. You just modify what mean does when it's compiling to Tabular.
Sure, but I mean, I can imagine missing behavior for some image processing operation, for example. Some very elaborate things, machine learning things. What does it do when there's missing stuff? What does classify do when there's missing stuff?
Depends on what you ask as an option,
right?
Other it fails. I mean, some methods can deal missing data, but most of the methods cannot. In that case, if you have imputation on, which is the default, it imputes them.
But
otherwise, it fails with the message that you have missing data.
But we can't even represent missing in images, right?
Yeah, I was about to say that we don't have a way to represent missing in images.
No. I mean, okay.
You can fake it with alpha channel and use alpha as a weight, but yeah.
What to do in visualization, etc. So one possibility is drop the data point, which is what we often do. 2 is drop with an indicator.
Sorry, by visualization, you mean typesetting of Tabular or like
No, I mean list plot. E.g., we know the X value, but not the Y value.
So you put a bunch of straight vertical lines, like light gray.
Well, indicate with a tick-like thing. You know what I'm saying? Drop with an indicator. Okay. So another thing would be, e.g., array plot.
Also, in visualization, we didn't have missing when we developed visualization, and users feed us so many things that are not missing but are not real. So the correct characterization for a function like for visualization functions is non-real.
Yeah, okay. Well, or complex or whatever. But I mean, so this is the case. Okay, look, there are 3 cases. Depends on whether any coordinate is defined. And that could be very subtle because it could be in a stream plot or something. Okay, so case 1, no coordinate is defined. Probably have to drop, except if there's a legend. And then some coordinates are defined. Some placement coordinates are defined. So you know where the data is. And then there's all placement coordinates are defined. I mean, there's things. What other things are there? Visualization, there's modeling as well, which we already talked about. You know, with modeling, again, you could have a situation where the x coordinate is defined, but the y coordinate isn't. And can you do anything better with that than just saying both are undefined?
You mean like fitting, or what kind of modeling?
Yeah, something like that. I mean, like, for example, here's an example. You have 10-dimensional data, and some of your data points are missing 2 of their dimensions. What happens? Yeah, e.g., you know, what about dimension reduction in that case? You should be able to, in other words, if you have 10-dimensional data and you have 8 of the coordinates, that's enough to be able to do a lot of things, even though you couldn't place it precisely.
What you could do with dimensionality reduction, if you have a function trained to do dimensionality reduction already, you can also impute the missing data.
Yeah, okay, right, fine.
Yeah. But yeah, or you could, to do in general, you can do dimensionality reduction on missing data.
Right, but so look, a fundamental thing is, okay, 4 is just impute the missing data. That's a different case, probably. Well, that's, no, actually, that's just a thing to do.
No, but fill the missing data is reducing it to cases that are understood, right? So that makes it normal data, which is missing free.
Yes, I agree. But that's another one of these. Look, I mean, in a mean, for example, imputing the missing data is very different from ignoring the missing data. Well, actually, for mean specifically, it might not be so different.
I don't know. I mean, depends on how you impute or what you impute.
Okay, but let me take a more extreme example. Let's take max as an example. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know, handling for mean versus max. So in max,
you know, we need a max version that's more like descriptive statistics than a mathematical function.
What do you mean?
Like a list max that behaves on lists, kind of like how a descriptive statistics does.
In what way?
So that you can get column-wise maxes, for instance. You know, it doesn't reduce it to a,
yeah.
You know.
Yes, maybe we do need that, a list max.
Remember, that's the element-wise we talked about a few weeks ago. So element-wise of max does the list max.
I see. Okay. Well, I think it's probably pretty common to use max.
Well, I mean, we cooked that goose, so I mean, it is.
No, but I mean list max. You know, it's worth having its own.
Possibly, yes.
Huh.
What the hell does that mean?
Are you using a prototype?
Oh, it drilled all the way down.
Oh no, yeah, it has. I mean, to make it do anything, you need to have 2 arguments. So you could put a (5) for the second argument, or a.
Why that?
No. Element was max acts as a function. Yeah.
Max is a function. So add another argument.
To what?
After the lists.
To element-wise max. Element-wise max has a single argument now, so it just returns it.
Right. So just, yeah, where you're.
Oh,
there you go. Yeah. That would do it.
Exactly.
What the heck?
It's boring because the first one is all
bigger.
Not
very interesting.
Yeah, okay, I get it.
But we even need one that works just on one big array type thing, like a mean, like a data reduction.
Understand.
Sorry, what do you mean, Roger? This works on a
Max
big
already
array.
does that. Max does that on a big array.
No, the problem is what Roger is saying is that we want this to basically not drill. See what I'm saying? In this case.
To behave like mean, like if you give that array that Stephen is typing in now to mean, you will get column-wise means.
Okay.
And you want column-wise maxes.
Yeah. I mean, it's possibly a mistake that Max flattens, but it's a very old mistake.
Yeah.
You can apply element-wise max and get that.
Yeah,
yes, you
very
can.
Complicated, but
yeah.
So it is probably the case that we need a list max to deal with this situation. Because, okay, we should probably wrap in a moment.
Where I see people having a ton of problem right now, so what I would put front and center is kind of descriptive statistics, at least, like list processing functions. Yeah. This is where it's like a real pain today with missing stuff. And then progressively seep in deeper and deeper into solvers and other things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, visualization is working right now.
I think that we don't have a lot of problems in visualization because we tackled it, but we can make it richer, like you suggest.
Yeah.
The other thing is that I think we need a list of tools in the tabular thing that gives you, to fill missing, to remove missing, and that will mitigate everything from down, the whole workflow. And then progressively the whole system gets kind of more adaptive.
Well, okay, but then the question is, what do we do? I mean, so, one way to mitigate missing is replace them all by zeros.
Or some, I mean,
or nothing, for example.
I mean, but we have, like at Julio, we curated like a whole table of sort of common ways to do, fill missing.
Yeah. We've got, and it depends on the type. Like strings, you don't want to replace with a 0. You want to replace probably with an empty string.
Pretty much.
Yeah. This is a column-based operation typically.
Where is your list of these things?
Open replace missing direct page. I haven't renamed that yet.
Replace missing?
Yeah. Oh, I did rename that. Sorry. Transform missing. I forgot to delete that. Yeah. Okay. So if you look at the table, there's a bunch of things there.
We have got to reduce the size of these.
Yeah. You sent an email, Brian answered.
Okay.
This on the published pages has been.
So that the first one that says constant, that's your 0 case, Stephen.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are all interesting. What about the previous non-missing element, as opposed to the next non-missing element? You have previous that. Sorry.
Yeah, and I need to sort it non-alphabetically to make it more useful to read, or maybe split it in different tables.
And that using the previous element, I mean, from the nature of data collection, that's not an uncommon case.
No, it's not an uncommon case.
Yeah. I think the people that do census, they don't fill in the addresses if it's like 4 people in the same house.
Yeah.
They use the same from the above.
Well, these are all very reasonable.
And these are basically, with the exception of interpolate, but that I'm going to in a minute, these are univariate, let's say. I mean, they work on a single column. Interpolate, you have 2 ways. You can assume the data is equally spaced and work on and ordered and still work on the single column, same as the others. Or if you signal that one column is the independent variable, like time, typically it means almost like 99% of the time is time. So I mean, if we had that time series in Tabular, for example, this would be very, very interesting to be able to use that. And then
what do
there
we
are
have
few
in time
techniques.
series itself? Do we have any concept of missing data in time series?
Yeah.
And how is it handled?
Typically interpolation. But you can give any function you want to handle it. But that's not necessarily a good thing. I mean, that means that you also have full responsibility.
Yeah. But this is what we're trying to do here. I mean, to take care of the most common cases, so you don't have to write functions to do that.
Exactly.
Then there are techniques that are fancier. Like, for example, this nearest I have written there in the table is basically the closest between next and previous. But you could is unfortunate, but you have nearest neighbors, and we need. I mean, I need to do some work on the naming here. But nearest neighbor is looking at the whole row.
Yeah. Right.
So it's defining a distance function between is a similar concept of the mean. Yeah, it's looking at missing and non-missing, and weighting the distance. Yeah, and so you replace with the closest row.
Nearest row, closest row, or something.
Yeah,
Use the word row because it's the whole thing.
Exactly, it's like replace, like find the closest row, and then take that element for that specific column and replace it. Yeah. And then you have even fancier techniques, but which are still simpler than what we do with the syntactic missing value, which is like very complicated. Where you, for example, fit a linear model, like a column B could be a linear combination of the other columns, and you can do this recursively and try to impute missing data in all the columns. I mean, there are a lot of techniques to do this, yeah. But
what about from nearest row as a name? So the from gives you the indication that there's more to it than just dealing with this element on its own.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, we can probably go through these in a separate meeting.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Zooming out, and then we have to wrap up here. So with respect to the original question, what I think we're concluding is that there should be variants of missing where either we're specifying in the outer sort of operation wrapper missing behavior, or we're specifying the missing behavior burnt into the missing itself that will then sort of be made use of in operations. That in the case of, I mean, all the stuff that you've defined here for transform missing would also apply to import. In other words, this is an attempt to just get rid of the missings.
Yes.
As opposed to carrying the missings and tagging a missing behavior.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say those two are orthogonal approaches.
Right. I mean, you can imagine exotic things like a missing behavior in a list, which says, go always pick up the value. If you need to get a value here, get it from the next element of the list. So, I mean, I think one point is there are situations in which you can carry a symbolic missing, and there are situations in which you just have to commit to something. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we've got two different things we're doing here. So carrying the symbolic missing, we've got the missing object and missing behavior. Replacing, we've got transform missing, and we've also got options to import and so on. And in a sense, missing behavior is like a lazy transform, correct? Missing behavior says transform this only at the moment when you absolutely need to use it in other words, okay, so look, there are different, eventually missing must be transformed for many kinds of operations. Okay, so one possibility is case one, keep missing symbolic, recording a missing action somewhere, a missing behavior, somewhere. And case 2, transform the missing explicitly into something that isn't missing. So that's the eager, and that's the lazy case. Do we agree?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the lazy is passing the buck, basically.
Right. But keeping the information that this is missing, whereas the transform is just like blow it up.
We also have a third case for tabular, which is that when we do transformations there, we can, since we explicitly record and efficiently record what's missing, we can make it work on only the non-missing things very easily.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I don't understand. I mean, but fundamentally to the user, it's like, do you keep the trace of the missing, or do you replace it by 0 or something? And sometimes you only replace it by 0 inside an operation.
But I think, for instance, like Rob has now implemented mean of, let's say, a kind of, you know, of a column, right? And if they're missing, it just ignores the missing.
Well,
and
okay, but that's only one possibility, as you've said in the
yes,
you know, there are many different possibilities.
Yes.
Right. And it's, you know, the way the missing works is, you know, as it is now, when I just have this sort of generic missing, is very efficient because it's just using bitmaps to propagate the missing. So we can, you know, we'll be able to, so if we can have a default case that does a bit of that, but that would be nice. It would keep things very efficient for big tables, but we can have these different flavors of missing, but it's going to add, you know, quite a bit of memory and processing time to propagation of missing.
Right.
But given that, you know, we can do it. I mean, I guess, you know, there will be questions like if I add 2 missings with different missing behaviors, you know, what?
Yeah, I understand. But that's like 2 plots with different, you know, you show 2 plots with different axes where we have to make a decision.
Yeah.
But this seems to me fairly flexible and usable, and a really common thing, and something we should be able to do is like on something like importing a spreadsheet with missing behavior are automatic. See, I don't know, maybe the -999, you just never detect it. I mean, there's no way to automatically flag that.
Well, we have a missing value pattern option that would allow you to say that that's to be detected.
Yeah.
And what does it do with it when it detects it?
Records it.
Well, it replaces it with missing.
Oh, it does?
It with missing, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
That's again, that's
value?
A column thing typically. Like in this column, -1 is missing.
Okay. Well, so again, how about we do this? Let's try and make a guide page of all things missing, so to speak, which includes things like missing value pattern, all these kinds of things, to try and pull together what our different design approaches are to this. Recognizing that you're either getting rid of the missings or you're keeping the missings and saying what to do with them. Fair? I mean, sometimes to say what to do with them means if there's ever a missing, blow up the computation. You know, make sense?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Anything else for this meeting?
No.
Great. Let's wrap it up. See you guys soon.